It's been a short while since we made the last news broadcast. A heck of a lot has gone down since then, but the most important thing, and I guess this is probably the main reason why I'm making this, is we are so far down the road already, guys. And I'm going to demonstrate to you. I've spoken to you about GESARA before. That's the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act, and it is imminent. There is so much going on in the background that isn't just an indicator, but is like a siren and a red light going off, demonstrating to me that GESARA they basically just got to literally, we're almost at the point where all that's got to happen is it's got to be announced publicly. So let's just go through a couple of those indicators, those sirens and red lights that are going off that are demonstrating to us that both the quantum financial system or the new financial system that's going to be based on quantum, it may not be called the quantum financial system, but these are all signs that demonstrate 100% that both GESARA and whatever the new quantum financial processing system will be called is imminent and basically is in the process of happening. So the first thing, guys, is the BRICS countries, guys, are all basically building a new asset-backed currency. And in fact, they're all going to be backed by gold. The first two countries that backed their currencies was Russia. They backed the yuan, at least the ruble, and China backed the yuan. And since then, all five of the BRICS countries, that's Brazil, India, Russia, China, and South Africa, have now asset-backed their countries. It hasn't been made public yet, guys, but it has happened in the background. In other words, what has happened is the various national governments have sat down and they've all agreed on a fixed price of gold relative to the assets or the gold available in the country. So that's already been done. In the USA, it went through Congress. It was called, I can't think of the bill number, but it was actually called the Resumption of the Gold Standard Bill. And that was passed, I think, on the 25th or the 27th of October. I'm not sure of the exact date, but it was around the 25th of October. So that's in process. The USA has now also, through Congress, has approved the asset backing of their currencies. And so, as I explained to you previously, how this has been brought about, or how the white hats or the good guys have basically facilitated this, is the BRICS countries have asset backed their currencies. And remember, the BRICS countries are countries that sell a lot of raw materials. Like South Africa sells gold and tin and platinum and all sorts of other raw materials, diamonds, etc. South Africa, now that our currency is asset-backed, we're now saying to the US and Britain and France, Germany, etc., guys, if you want to buy coal, if you want to buy anything from South Africa, please no longer pay us with that ridiculous, pointless, valueless, debt-backed currency called fiat currency. We want you to now pay us in real, meaningful currencies. And hence, what that's basically done is it's put the rest of the countries in the world under massive pressure, because they are now being forced to also asset back their currencies so that they can, in other words, it's more of a barter system where you're going to exchange gold for oil or some kind of value for some other kind of value, rather than exchanging debt for whatever assets you're going to purchase. The second thing, guys, which is massive, is Saudi Arabia requested membership of BRICS. It's been approved, and they've now been brought into the fold. So the countries that I believe have now already been accepted is Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and Algeria. And there's a couple of others. But the greatest news of all, guys, is there's another 120 countries whose PLCs or corporations that are masquerading as republics have all been declared bankrupt. And as a result, they all want to asset back their currencies, and they all want to join BRICS. So it's really worked out incredibly well. In fact, what the BRICS countries are now doing is they are forming a currency which is called the reserve currency, or the currency of last resort, or the currency for international trade, which previously was the petrodollar. Guys, there's now going to be a second reserve currency. But the difference is the petrodollar is backed by debt, and the new BRICS asset-backed reserve currency, guys, means that it's exchanging real value for real value. So what this has literally done is it's forced 120 countries plus now to all start asset backing their currencies, and it's forced big countries, the G8 countries, which traditionally are very, very deep state orientated, very cabal orientated. It's forced them to now start asset backing their currencies. So as we're moving on, very soon, all 209 countries aren't going to asset back because they want to, but they're going to have to asset back their currencies because they're forced to. Mainly, guys, is the world is in a process. It's kind of in turmoil at the moment because, as you can imagine, you've got to break the old to bring in the new. So right now, you can expect, and it's been artificially propped up at the moment. For what reason, I don't know. It's obviously been supported by the white hats. There's a reason that the stock exchange hasn't imploded yet. But if you look at all the fundamentals, I mean, if you go back to 1929, when they called it a Great Depression, was when the economy had declined for 3 continuous or consecutive 3-month periods, right? That was called a depression. Guys, we're now sitting in about the 7th or 8th quarter where there has been a decline in the economy. In other words, the GDP has been declining. So we are effectively, guys, in a depression and have been in a depression for a long time. But because the mainstream media hasn't said it, very few people actually understand that it's actually gone down. So when that implodes, guys, because one of the other things that I mentioned to you in my previous video was the US had to pay their bills. So every single 30th September, the USA has to pay their bills. And unfortunately, the rest of the world, South Africa, China, Russia, etc., are no longer accepting air in payment for their goods. They're wanting real tangible assets. And so come the 30th of October, they were unable to pay their debts. They were given a 14-day leeway period till the 14th of October. Guys, that's come and gone. Somehow or other, ultimately, what the white hats always try to do is they try to reduce, eliminate, or mitigate any sort of collateral damage as much as possible. And so imagine if that was allowed to go ahead. It would be absolutely devastating. There would be people who would be completely traumatized. So for whatever reason, the fact that the US hasn't been able to pay their debts is being artificially propped up. The stock exchange, for whatever reason, is also being artificially propped up. The dollar, because it's currently seen as the reserve currency, is artificially extremely high relative to other currencies. But as soon as all of this stuff starts falling into place, in other words, as soon as the 120 countries asset back their currencies, as soon as BRICS now forms this reserve currency and it becomes official and they start trading in this reserve currency and the rest of the world dumps the dollar, because remember, this is one of the biggest challenges, and this is what's going to negatively affect the dollar dramatically, is everybody had to buy oil, gold, silver, whatever it was. They had to pay for it in the petrodollar. And in order to do that, every single country had to have a trade surplus with the USA. In other words, they had to be holding a lot of US dollars. Now, as soon as they create this BRICS reserve currency as an alternative to the fiat petrodollar, what's going to happen? Every single country that's been forced to hold all of these ridiculous petrodollars, in other words, to trade and buy and pay for stuff around the world, not always from America, because even if you bought oil from Saudi Arabia, you paid in the petrodollar. What that's effectively going to mean is all the countries around the world are going to start dumping their petrodollars because they don't need it. And the more they dump and the more surplus and the more these worthless debt-based debt instruments, for want of a better word, as the more and more they get dumped, the US dollar is literally going to implode. Guys, there is so much positive stuff going on. So let's just have a look. One of the really incredible things, guys, is I actually got hold of a document the other day from Standard Bank. It is so exciting. They are literally, I stated this to you before, that banks have already been sent on training. So the banks and the bank staff are already well aware of the new system. So the old system for international bank transfers was called the SWIFT system. That has now been replaced. Guys, I'm not sure whether it's going to be called the quantum financial system, but it's based on a whole quantum computer system. So let's call it the quantum financial system for now for ease of use. So the quantum financial system has now now been trained, or should I rather say, the bank employees all around the world have now been trained on this new system. But more importantly, guys, this document that I got from Standard Bank actually demonstrates it emphatically to me that there's no doubt that they are now talking about what asset is backing your currency. What asset are you purchasing, and what asset are you using to purchase whatever it is you're going to be buying? So it's a very comprehensive, beautiful document that, if you know how to read between the lines, is an absolute 100% proof that, I guess I'm going to say the quantum financial system, the global currency reset, the asset backing of currencies have gone ahead. So all of those are precursors to GESARA. So for GESARA to happen, remember, GESARA is the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act. For GESARA to happen, all wars around the world have to be over. So before GESARA can be announced, the war in the Ukraine has to be done. The inevitable war that's about to happen between China and Taiwan must be completed. So all of those conflicts have to be sorted out. That is one of the things that is certainly delaying things. But what's so beautiful to observe is to see that it's not just going to be a on and off switch. It's not, okay, no GESARA and today we've got GESARA, but rather I can see the process. I can see all the things that are, like I said, like sirens, like red lights going off that are going, GESARA is imminent. Certainly, the quantum financial system is now active in the BRICS countries. As I said to you previously, whenever I used to receive payments, there used to be a charge come off. Since the 19th of September, there's been no charges for all of the international. So I receive a weekly payment from Ireland, and there's been no charges levied on my account any longer. So that, guys, is also a very, very clear indication that the quantum financial system, or whatever it is not swift, okay? And also, I was chatting to a lady who actually imports stuff. And she was saying to me that she was actually part of that. She actually gave me that document from Standard Bank. Part of the changes is, before she used to have a SWIFT code. Now she's got a completely new, if I remember correctly, I think it was an 18-digit number that she's now got to use to do these international transfers. So things are so beautiful. Things are changing in the background. GESARA is basically imminent. It's been set up, guys. Literally, we're kind of at the point where it's really got to just be brought into the public domain. Remember, as soon as it gets announced in the public domain, like I said, there's a couple of things that have to happen first. For example, we have to end the war in the Ukraine. The inevitable conflict between Taiwan and China has to be completed. So that's definitely going to delay the announcement of GESARA. But in the interim, all of these beautiful things that are happening in the background are occurring, and they are crystal clear indicators that things are completely on track. Something else that's beautiful, guys, is, remember, Saudi Arabia was pivotal in creating or supporting the US and the cabal, the bank gangsters, to impose the petrodollar on us in 1971, when Nixon took, for 2 weeks, as he said, he took the US off the gold standard for 2 weeks, 52 years later, right? But Congress has just, and it's actually, they've actually used the incorrect name for the bill. So the bill is called the Gold Standard Return Bill or something, right? Returning to the gold standard. But we're not returning to the gold standard. We're now moving towards asset backing currencies. Now, the difference between a gold standard and asset backing is profound, because if you asset back a currency and you say, let's rather talk about gold backing. If you gold back a currency with gold, for example, gold has to be separated out and is no longer a commodity, but becomes a controlled process or a controlled resource to back your currency. That's the gold standard. But when you asset back your currencies, what it basically means is gold is chosen on a day, and a value is accredited to gold on that day. And then all countries value their currencies against gold on that day. And now that's a fixed value that is set. And now you set gold free, and gold becomes a commodity again, and it can be traded as a commodity, and it'll allow the price to be set by market forces, etc. So we're not returning to the gold standard, guys. We are now moving to something way better than the gold standard. We're moving to something called asset backing our currencies, right? The Crown Prince bin Salman has reduced the oil supply to the US. Guys, that is so massive. Not only have they reduced the supply to the world by 2 million barrels, but they've also said that they have invited Russia to work and join with OPEC. This is massive, guys. And the reason I say it's so massive is Saudi Arabia was pivotal. Saudi Arabia basically back in 1971 agreed that if the USA would use their military might to ensure that the House of Saud would stay in power, in other words, the royal family in Saudi Arabia would remain in power, they agreed to support the petrodollar. They've now moved away, guys. They've joined Russia. They've joined with Russia. They've joined. In fact, they've been accepted into BRICS. Their currencies are now also asset-backed. Things are moving along at an incredible pace, right? Let's look a little bit closer to the information, right? Because remember, whoever controls the flow of information basically controls which timeline humanity or the collective consciousness of humanity gets to occupy. We are now gradually gaining, when I say we, I'm saying the good guys, the white hats, are gradually gaining more and more control of mainstream media. For example, Donald Trump's best friend, John Malone, has bought shares in the Discovery, I think it's in the Discovery Channel, who owns CNN. So he's now the controlling shareholder. He holds controlling sway over CNN. And I'm sure you've seen this in the last little while. Over the last couple of weeks, all sorts of people, all different people, presenters, CEOs, etc., have been fired from CNN. So that is a very positive move. You're going to very, very, very shortly, you're going to see a complete shift, a complete change in the narrative. In other words, the info, the data, the stuff that's been fed to the collective consciousness is going to shift diametrically at CNN very soon. Also remember, bin Salman also financed the deal that Elon Musk did with Twitter. So Twitter is an incredibly powerful resource, guys, that was used to manipulate the elections, was used to manipulate the collective psyche of humanity, was used to force us to make all the wrong choices that coerced and forced us to occupy very, very low timelines. In other words, timelines of war, lack, famine. Those are the worst timelines for us, but the optimal timelines for the cabal. So they've used their machine, their mainstream media, their peer-reviewed science, their control of the educational system, their PR through big business, through big pharma, etc. They've used tele-live vision. They've used movies. They've used every resource that they have available. They've used to control the flow of information. Guys, we are, as I said to you, slowly but surely, Truth Social started. So that became another way to get truth and get information out to people. When Elon Musk now is going to very soon, all the people who've been banned, all the messages that were banned on Twitter are now going to be allowed. So can you see how the good guys are gradually gaining control of the narrative? They're gradually gaining control of the flow of information. And now that we are starting to control the flow of information means that we are gradually shifting humanity from the very low negative timelines of war, etc., to much better, much higher timelines. And gradually, as we push ourselves onto these, or we make better choices, we get a better flow of information. In other words, way more positive information flowing to humanity. The level of fear declines. The level of anger, the level of depression, etc., starts to decline. As this gradual process continues, humanity is being shifted onto way more positive timelines. Guys, I know you don't think that at the moment. I'm sure you're looking around your world and you're hearing about the possible threat of a nuclear war. You're looking around at inflation that's going through the roof. You're expecting a stock market crash. If you're in the US, your currency's about to implode. I'm sure you're looking at all of this sort of stuff and you're going, wow, and you saying that we're moving on to more positive timelines? Absolutely. Guys, what's literally going down as far as movement onto positive timelines is as we're shifting, things are not getting worse. Let's put it this way. Things are definitely not getting worse. they're just becoming revealed. In other words, previously, all of this stuff would have probably been going on in the background, maybe due to the pressure that's been applied by the White Hats, the Q group, the White Dragons, etc. Maybe the things are being accelerated a little bit faster than they traditionally would have happened. But previously, because we were all under MK Ultra mind control, we were kind of pushed and coerced and manipulated to believe all the lies, to believe the mainstream. You know, we've all been indoctrinated to believe that authority is truth. I mean, my own father-in-law the other day said to me, all the stuff that you're telling me, I haven't seen it on CNN. How can it be true? And unfortunately, guys, that's how we've been programmed. You know, we believe that peer-reviewed science, if it's peer-reviewed science, it must be truth. No, peer-reviewed science is nothing more than bribing a first scientist to get a result, the one you want, and then paying the second scientist to get the same results. And now you've got peer-reviewed science. And of course, we believe authority is trust, so we go by that stuff. This is what has limited humanity so dramatically. The great news, guys, is that the most wonderful stuff, the quantum financial system, every day I see more and more and more beautiful positive things happening. GESARA is imminent. When GESARA is actually officially announced, guys, most beautiful stuff starts to happen is within 120 days, they have to have new elections. But in the interim, the current government is dissolved immediately. So that means the Senate, Congress, the White House, the executive, every single grouping is dissolved. And in your country, whatever governing authority is in place will be dissolved. And they've already set up, it's already been designed. I'm giving it a name. I haven't heard a name. I haven't picked this name up in my research at all, but I'm calling it the Council of Wisdom. So we're going to be led for that 120 odd days. I believe that we're going to be led by a group of highly evolved, highly conscious individuals that have only got the best interests of humanity at heart until we run a new election. But remember, when we're going to run this new election, there's going to be no cheating at all. There can be no cheating at all, because this election is actually going to be conducted as a quantum election. In other words, every ballot is tracked from the moment it's printed to the moment it's crossed or ticked or whatever the requirement is in the country, to the moment that it's tabulated and calculated. It is physically impossible to cheat in an election. So for the first time in history, we're no longer going to have selected leaders. We're going to have elected leaders. In other words, we're going to have leadership that is going to be working in the interests of humanity. I mean, I'm sure you remember whenever we used to elect politicians in the past, it was acceptable that they would say one thing to get us to vote for them, or should I rather say, to get us to think people voted for them, right? In other words, they wouldn't have to cheat as much, so they'd get some votes. And then once they got elected, they would do a 180-degree about turn and then do exactly the opposite of what they said. Guys, the difference is these people that are going to be elected now are going to be elected, or should I rather say, the people that will be leading us will no longer be the people who are selected by the bank gangsters with all their devious processes and cheating, etc., that they've done over the years, but is rather going to be, for the first time in a very, very, very long time, these are going to be elected leaders. These are going to be leaders that are actually there with the best interest of humanity at heart. So the future, guys, is absolutely beautiful. There, of course, was an attempted coup in China recently. I'm sure you guys must have heard on the news that a brigade of the Chinese army, the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, went into Beijing, and everybody thought it was to arrest Xi Jinping, but in fact it was to support him, it was to protect him. And then I think you must have also seen on TV the other day, Xi Jinping has been leader or chairman of the CCP for 10 years and was just re-elected for a third term for another 5 years. Sitting at the conference or at the Congress next to him was the previous leader. He was arrested in public, guys. Him and 3,000 other corrupt leaders have been arrested, and I'm not sure whether they've been executed, but they've certainly gone on trial for these horrific crimes of corruption, etc. So things are really moving along. Putin is working for the good of humanity. Him and Xi Jinping, by asset backing or gold backing their currencies, has forced the rest of the world to start asset backing their currencies. The benefit of asset backing, guys, means there can never ever be inflation in the future. It means there's not going to be these massive swings in currency valuations against each other. I mean, the South African rand has been one of the most attacked currencies in the world. The hedge funds have done terrible things to the rand over the last maybe 20 years or so. They've really attacked the rand from every possible angle. And so now, as we move into this new great awakening, guys, where all of our currencies are asset backed, where we are going to be supported, encouraged, we're going to have elected leaders, no longer selected leaders. We're going to have to retrain. At the moment, we're basically being governed under martial law. So we've been fighting, the world has been fighting a war since 1776. And let me explain what I mean by that. Since 1776, that was the War of Independence in the United States. Since 1776, every 2 years, and the reason for this is there was never a peace treaty signed between England or the UK and the USA. It was only a surrender, and therefore martial law continues to be applied. So since 1776, every 2 years, Congress reapplies martial law. What that means is we are now, all of our courts are run under martial law. Under martial law, guys, things are completely different. We as humanity have no sovereign rights. We are seen as dead and lost at sea. We are registered as corporations. It's been a diabolical system. But the great news is, guys, because all of the countries around the world, there's 120 countries, I spoke about that, and are joining BRICS, and all the BRICS countries, etc., are asset backing their currencies. But what's more important than that, guys, is the reason they asset backing their currencies is because they've been forced to do it. They don't have an option. Their countries are literally, when I say their countries, their countries or the corporations that were pretending to be their countries are bankrupt. So all countries have returned to republics. The fantastic news about that is now that all countries are republics, that means that all of us have been returned to being sovereign beings. As sovereign beings, guys, we have what is referred to as inalienable rights. That's another word they lied to us about. They used to try to say to us, inalienable rights. No, the correct words is inalienable. And the reason it's inalienable, guys, is nothing. A lien means, when you put a lien against your property, means you offer it as collateral. You can never, your property rights are absolute. Your rights to travel are absolute, which means in the future, we're not even going to need a license. If you're driving your private vehicle, you're not even going to need a license to drive your car. Of course, if you drive a commercial vehicle, or you drive a government vehicle, or if you drive a massive vehicle that crosses state lines or provincial lines, then you're going to need a license. But a normal person in the normal day-to-day things that you do, traveling to work, going between customers, we no longer even require licenses. So things are going to really, really improve. When you throw in the fact that we're also going to be exposed, or there's 6,000 hidden patents, guys. These are patents around free energy. These are patents around using water, yes, water to run your car. These are things that are going to revolutionize how our bodies, in other words, the whole medical field is going to change. We're going to use sonic healing. We're going to use med beds, etc. The future for humanity is absolutely fantastic. Yes, guys. And this is the part that I just want to put a little caveat in here. Yes, things are going to look really bad. Things are going to appear devastating. You may even see a nuclear bomb go off. Guys, remember, it's CGI. Every bit of information I have to hand is clearly indicating that it is physically impossible. Those nuclear weapons have been deactivated. You cannot set off a nuclear weapon. It tears the fabric of time, and it cannot be allowed. So even if you see CGI and a nuclear bomb go off, guys, it's not real. So just remain calm. Make sure that this is what you really need to do, guys. I always say, rather have and not need than need and not have. So I've said this in some of my previous videos, but Go and get yourself a little bit of dry food, enough for maybe 10 days. Make sure you've got enough water. Ensure if you need medication or whatever the case is, guys, whatever you need, look at your specific circumstances and make sure that you've got backups of everything for let's say 10 to 14 days. You may never need it, but if you do, guys, rather have and not need than need and not have. And let me just wrap this up by saying the future for humanity is more than magnificent. The future for humanity is going to be unbelievable. I can't even visualize how amazing it's going to be, guys. Imagine when we've got free energy. Just take the amount of money you spend on electricity. Take out the amount of money that you're spending on fuel every month. Remember, as GESARA has announced, we're no longer going to be paying personal taxes any longer. There's going to be one tax, and it looks like that tax is going to be what they refer to as a general sales tax on new goods purchased only. And that number is going to be around 15%, which is going to be paid at the time of purchase. So you'll no longer need to put in tax returns. You buy something, the general sales tax is paid on new goods. If you buy a second-hand house, no payment, right? Only new goods purchased. Can you imagine? Your tax bill is going to reduce, your energy bill is going to reduce. You are going to be your disposable income is going to go through the roof. Generally, what that's going to mean, guys, is overall, the whole world is going to begin to transform. We're all going to be inspired to help each other. We're all going to no longer go to jobs we hate and do just enough not to get fired, but we're going to be encouraged to encourage each other, to help each other, to produce the best that we can. The world that we're moving to, guys, is unbelievable. Like I said, I picture the most magnificent future, and I'm sure that I'm not even picturing how magnificent it's going to be. Hold the line, guys. We're almost there. We really are getting really close. I know it's tough. I know there's a lot going on at the moment, and I know it doesn't appear like this. But we are so close to living the Great Awakening. We are so close to the most magnificent, magnificent future.